Senior Biotechnology Analyst at Noble Capital, and our next presenting company is GeoVax. And a year ago they presented here and have made substantial progress in that past year. One of their two products is a vaccine for COVID-19, which has had substantial data in the last year, as well as being selected for a 10,000 patient trial sponsored by the government. And in the past year, they've also made significant progress in their gene therapy program. And here to tell us about that is David Dodd, CEO of GeoVax.
Thank you, Robert. I already losing my first person. Oh well, it's happened before. Anyway, it's a pleasure to be here. I started to use the same presentation that I provided last year because it had anticipated milestones, and I'll just address it because I have an updated one, because the fact is the major milestones that we presented this time last year we've either met or achieved, and so we'll talk about those and why we think that GeoVax provides an exciting opportunity for investment as well as for developments that will improve lives for people on a global basis. So there are three primary programs that are advancing. One is GEO stands for GeoVax, so CM04S1 is our next generation COVID-19 vaccine. We'll talk about that. We have a candidate for a smallpox vaccine. I know that's been in the news a lot over the last couple of years, but especially since last August when it was declared a public health emergency of international concern by WHO. We'll talk about that. And then Gedeptin is our solid tumor therapy, gene-directed therapy that we recently announced we're moving forward into a phase 2 clinical trial on that. I'm going to focus on those, and I'd like to I can talk fast as a Southerner, so I'm hoping to be able to provide you an opportunity to ask questions, and I would encourage whatever questions that you have. So what about these COVID-19 vaccines? Well, let's talk about the first generation vaccines. The great news is they were developed in 10 months. So before that, it always took 10 to 15 years to develop a vaccine. It's never been done quicker. The fastest any clinical program ever been achieved was 5 years within that framework. So they were approved. But what have we learned about them? So here we're talking about the mRNA vaccine. That's the Pfizer, the BioNTech, and Moderna. And then the protein adjuvant, which is the Novavax vaccine. Well, they have limited breadth of protection. And what that means is that when a new variant arises, which happens, it seems like, more and more frequently, they do not provide protection. And one then has to go back, reconstruct, and take a different element of the virus or the antigen of the spike protein, as they call it, and reconstruct that. That takes a while. By the time you get it done, you're on to probably the next emerging variant. So we need something that gives you broader protection and also durability. It's very clear today and well recognized. I just read a reference in some medical journal over the weekend that they wane very rapidly. 3 to 6 months is what we see. If you remember in that fall of 2020, what we were told was, one, that they will last for a year and they were 95% effective. The real world is they're maybe 40 to 50% effective and they last 3 to 6 months. That's inadequate. It causes people to just say, I'm tired of it, I don't want to take any more. Because of that, what is the next generation vaccine supposedly addressing? Is to fix those two. One, to give you greater breadth. Can you construct a vaccine that gets ahead of the variant so that when a new variant emerges that you don't have to reconfigure it and it provides protective immunity? And then secondly, can you do 8 to 12 months in terms of durability? And that's what we're going to show you that we have, and that is being sponsored right now by the federal government in a major trial. Last year I talked about Project NextGen. It was a new program that had been announced in April of 2023. It's an exciting program, $5 billion, specifically intended to support the clinical stage development of COVID-19 vaccines that gave greater breadth of protection and also greater durability. And we were proud to announce on June the 18th that we had received an award valued at approximately $400 million from BARDA, from the federal government, out of the White House, for a 10,000 patient phase 2B program comparing our CM04S1 vaccine against an FDA-authorized mRNA vaccine. We believe it'll be the Moderna one to be, and that trial will be starting in 2025. So since the announcement, the CRO was assigned to us, and then from that, the sites are now all confirmed. And now we're basically moving forward with manufacturing and that type of stuff so that we can move to implementation in 2025. So that's the basis of this. It's a big deal. There are only 6 vaccines that were funded under Project NextGen, and we're excited as can be about that. It was a very long, lengthy, sometimes frustrating process of due diligence by the federal government. It took 14 months from when we submitted our application. We were told in October of 2023, so when we were here last year, we knew we were in negotiations with them about an award. We couldn't announce it, we couldn't discuss it. We actually had someone who attended our discussion that asked us over lunch that told us they could bring $1 billion into the company, but all they asked in return was that we give them a phone call the night before we issued the press release that we were receiving an award. I said, the only problem with that is I'm the one that goes to jail. So we chose not to do that. I think he was being facetious anyway, but we were quite excited about this. We also have other trials that are in phase 2. One we talked about last year. There are patient populations who have medical conditions such as blood cancers for whom their bodies lose the ability to generate an immune response to provide them protective immunity against a threat on their system. So people with blood cancers, people with renal disease, people with lupus, there's a host of medical conditions. There's 30+ million adults in the United States alone, over 400 million worldwide, who suffer from a medical condition that inhibits their ability to mount an adequate antibody response. And so those are the ones that for them, the pandemic's never ended. They are still at risk right now. And that includes people, for instance, with chronic lymphocytic leukemia, a blood cancer and all. These are populations at very high risk. So stem cell transplant patients, we have an that's a primary. It's comparing ours versus an mRNA vaccine as a primary vaccine. We have another phase 2 study, investigator-initiated led, which is specifically among CLL patients, chronic lymphocytic leukemia patients. It is well recognized that their disease and the therapy they're given deplete their body's ability to respond to antibody stimulation, which means that the current mRNA vaccines and monoclonal antibody therapies are inadequate for them. This trial is looking at every one of these patients have received an mRNA vaccine, so a Pfizer vaccine, and then half of them receive our vaccine as a booster, the other half receives the Pfizer. And we're going to talk about why this is very important. And then a fully enrolled, that now the data is being analyzed, is a healthy adult study that is as a mRNA vaccine, and then they're all receiving our vaccine in 2 different doses to see what the immune response will be. Those results should be coming out, well, they should be coming out this year, but they're going to be coming out in February, thereabouts of next year, just simply because the slowness of the statisticians doing their work, which is the #1 frustration of any CEO in this marketplace, is always the pace of getting to date. Now, what's important here is on November the 19th, just a few weeks ago, we issued a press release that for that CLL patient study, the interim results, which was built into the study, had come out. And basically, the Data Safety Monitoring Board, the DSMB, their recommendation was halt the arm of the Pfizer-BioNTech arm because it was missing its endpoint, continue only with our vaccine because ours was hitting the endpoint. So the rest of the trial, the continuation of the trial will simply be patients, CLL patients, who are only receiving our vaccine because they're discontinuing the Pfizer vaccine because of its inadequacy and it did not meet the cut on there. Bottom line is we beat we beat the Pfizer vaccine in this particular trial at the interim results. Who knows what the final results will be? We hope to have those results in 2025, so we'll keep you updated. Development plan, validate this as a vaccine that provides broader protection, lasts longer, and we are very specifically focusing it towards those populations who are immunocompromised, because that way we don't have to compete toe-to-toe with the Pfizers, the Modernas, the large players in the world. and all, and yet we do have an opportunity to collaborate with them because of the nature of the 10,000 patient BARDA study, as well as our own booster trial to show that ours is a better booster on top of mRNA, giving you greater protection, lasting longer than what you would get with just simply another shot of the Pfizer or the Moderna vaccine. Okay, everybody's heard about Mpox. We used to call it monkeypox. On August the 14th of this year, and also on November the 22nd, the WHO declared, and they redeclared on the 22nd, that Mpox remains as a public health emergency of international concern. That is the highest level of communication related to activity and funding and support that needs to go in against public health emergencies. So this is something that is a big deal, and it is not going away. Now, this is an ugly disease. Someone gets COVID, maybe they cough, they don't feel good, but they don't look any different. People can be scarred for life with Mpox, and it's very problematic. And the current outbreak is a lot different than what we had 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it was a less deadly form, about 1% mortality. The one we're dealing with today is estimated to be as high as 10%. It appears to be actually more like 3 to 5%. That's still much more deadly. It's concentrated among children. And also, what we're seeing is that it's migrating. And it's migrating much more rapidly. There are now reports in the United States, throughout Europe, and in other parts of the world, not just simply Africa. It's transmitted much more casually. The one in 2022 was primarily through sexual contact. This one can be someone who just happened to sleep in the bed that someone who had the virus has previously slept in, and they pick it up from the virus from either the sheets or the pillows or whatever. So what are we doing? Right now, you may or may not know there's one supplier worldwide, Bavarian Nordic, and they have a product called MVA-BN, BNB Bavarian Nordic. It's a global monopoly. They cannot produce enough because this is a very cumbersome product to manufacture. It takes months to be able to manufacture because of the process of growing the cells, etc. And whether we're manufacturing it or Bavarian Nordic, it takes that same amount until you move forward to a new manufacturing process. What we announced last year was that we had acquired the rights from NIH of their MVA, which we rebranded as GeoMVA rather than MVA-Geo. We do it our own way. And we have the full rights worldwide from the NIH to develop that as a vaccine, standalone vaccine for Mpox, smallpox, and be able to manufacture, commercialize that, distribute it worldwide. First thing you have to be able to do is obviously show that you've got the MVA, as we'll refer to it, is that you have that and that you can actually do a master seed virus. That then becomes the virus bank that you have to do all this under cGMP. Ultimately, you want to do a clinical batch under cGMP because that means you now have a product that when it's released can go into humans. And what this all shows you is that from last year to this year, we now have progressed that this month will be releasing our cGMP clinical batch product, which we've been briefing WHO and BARDA and CEPI and other major funding, non-dilutive funding agencies related to public health about our progress since July of this year before the public health emergency. We just recently were in a direct face-to-face briefing with WHO in Europe about our progress and all. So we have moved this forward just as we had hoped and what we had indicated was our goal since last year, that we went from where we had the rights and we were starting to work with it to where now we are producing and we'll be releasing yet this month our cGMP clinical batch, which means we can then sit down and say, let's talk about how we put this into humans and evaluate it in conjunction with it. We've also been informed by a major regulatory authority, we haven't disclosed who that is, of a expedited pathway for registration on this because of the critical need, et cetera, on this. So we're really moving forward with this. And we announced and talked about a little bit last year about our progress towards a new manufacturing process that will eliminate this slow, cumbersome process that has always been the method and is the only method for doing that will move us away from having to deal with these specially sourced chickens, these chicken eggs, the slow process, and we'll work on a suspension cell line and be able to transfer that to whatever type of manufacturing site we need to. And that is underway right now, and we've made announcements over the the last year of the licensing of the cell line that we would need to do that came from ProBiogen out of Berlin, Germany. Our CDMO is Oxford Biomedica. They used to be known as ABL Europe, but that was acquired from Oxford Biomedica. Oxford Biomedica is one of the leading companies or CDMOs in the world for experience dealing with the MVA, which is the basis of the vaccine. So those are our partners on it, and we continue to move forward with all of that. So finally, Gedeptin. Gedeptin deals with solid tumors. It's a very interesting technology. It is tumor agnostic. Basically, you inject a tumor with this PMP enzyme. It produces in the cell. You then follow it with an approved chemotherapeutic agent for hematologic patients. It has nothing to do with solid tumors. But when it encounters a tumor that's been treated with the PMP enzyme, it converts to fluoroadenine, so we use Gedeptin as a prodrug, and that becomes highly toxic to the tumors and destroys or reduces the tumors. And that's the concept. So long as it's needle accessible, which most solid tumors are in today's world, then Gedeptin is a candidate for that. We had talked about last year that we had been presenting data. This was from July of 2023 at an international congress on head and neck cancers in Toronto and all. What we have announced more recently on July 31st of this year was based upon a full review of all the data that we've seen behind our product in our Oncology Advisory Committee. We are moving forward with a phase 2 trial of first recurrent head and neck cancer patients of Gedeptin in conjunction with immune checkpoint inhibitor, and that trial is going to be initiated in the first half of 2025. We literally, maybe this week, probably yesterday for all I know, we're selecting the CRO, which is one that's very experienced in doing head and neck cancer studies and all, so we plan to get this one moving also because we believe there's great opportunity there. So the milestones catalyst, this is updated from last year, but it's the same 4 blocks. With our CMO4S1, what I've highlighted there is obviously we'll keep everybody updated on the progress of the Project Next Gen trial. The interim analysis indicated that we won, mRNA, Pfizer lost on the terms of treating CLL patients as a booster to them. The data results are being, we've announced that in a report, but there's further analysis of it that's going on right now. For the GeoMVA, Mpox, smallpox, as I just mentioned, the clinical batch is our next big milestone there. For Gedeptin, it's actually the operational progress towards the trial activation in what we call transform, the manufacturing process we're moving to with a continuous cell line. We'll just keep everybody updated as that progresses. Now, what does all this mean? If you look at, this is not a sales forecast, but if you look at the opportunities, if we look at just the immune-compromised patients that are not currently protected by the mRNA vaccines or the protein adjuvant vaccine, that population on a global basis is over $30 billion in value. That's not a sales forecast, but it shows you and underscores the importance of that medical need. Because remember, there are 30 million people, adults in the United States, there are 400 million worldwide, and they could be organ transplant patients because they're specifically given therapies to suppress their antibody system. So they're not going to respond well to these vaccines. So we're looking at those. We're looking at, obviously, the whole Mpox, smallpox. For what we're looking at, that's over $10 billion in value. We don't want all of it. We think we should be able to get a slice of that. For Gedeptin, both the early stage, we're talking about over $12 billion in opportunity. If you look at advanced head and neck cancer, that's another about $3 billion. So we're working in a space that offers a lot of opportunity because it represents some tremendous critical healthcare needs worldwide. And that's pretty much what we're doing where we're not in trouble. So I'm happy to take any questions from anyone and happy to answer those. And I appreciate your interest in GeoVax. So, questions? Anyone? Anyone? Yes, sir.
Assume the COVID vaccine gets approved. What is the sales process? How does it flow from the doctor to a patient who's...
Yeah, it's very interesting. This is another element of our point of differentiation. Because by differentiating and focusing on a population that currently is not being successfully addressed by current therapies, so they're unserved, underserved, then we reduce our competitive risk. And the other thing is, think about patients who have blood cancers, who have renal disease, who have these medical conditions, they are under active medical care. That's not like most of us in this room who, when we were dealing with a decision, do I take another vaccine, another booster, or if I'm considering that, those types, we make that decision ourselves. So these are individuals that are under active medical care, and they rely upon their medical team to guide them on what they need to be doing, because they're looking at their health in totality, because they've got numerous conditions they're dealing with. They've got a blood cancer type situation, that's impacting them and stuff. So their medical team is looking for opportunities, thank you, they're looking for opportunities to help them prepare themselves. And so it'll go through more of the traditional pharmaceutical type of marketing and selling, developing that relationship with those types of medical types of teams, so people who are dealing with those patients know, and they'll be the drivers rather than today the driver of a decision on a vaccine, like COVID-19 or another booster or another reconfiguration. That's pretty much an individual. And as we all know, COVID fatigue is real. People are sort of tired of that. So we did market research last year that pretty much validated that, and it was very well accepted as a concept study of this type of vaccine that deals with, there's two components of the immune system. You got antibody side and you've got your cellular side. And the antibody side is the one that every vaccine that's approved today focuses on. Unfortunately, that's also the side that if you have an immunocompromised condition, medical condition, you're not going to respond to. So you need to rely on your T cells. And our vaccine is constructed to induce not only a strong antibody, but also it induces a very strong T cell response, because we use two antigens out of the virus versus one, which is what all the other vaccines do. And we do that because our technology allows us to use multiple antigens out of a virus rather than only one. mRNA, protein adjuvant, these protein-based ones, they all, a shortcoming, if you want to call it that, or a characteristic of their technologies, they can only use one antigen at a time. And ours is one that we've actually put up to 8 antigens before to demonstrate how many can go into it. The downside of our technology has been its slow ability to manufacture a lot of product fast, which is what motivated us to move to a new manufacturing system, which we have underway. So, Roland, that answer you? Yes, sir.
What is the reliability of receiving payments?
Of receiving
from
payment.
From BARDA?
Oh, 100%.
Is it a modifiable grant?
No, the way it works
Someone come in
is,
and manage?
the way it works is cost reimbursement. They pay better than any payer you can have. You know, the federal government is not known for not wanting to pay people. If anything, you know, that you ask, I guess, Elon Musk and company about that. But no, they pay very well, very quickly. And so it's cost reimbursement. They pay us directly related to our manufacturing, our regulatory costs, and they pay directly on our behalf, our CRO. Because the greatest expense in that $400 million number is really the clinical trial. And so we being a small company of 25 plus people, in terms of having to manage a CRO to do a 10,000 patient trial is somewhat of a burden, so they're paying the CRO on our behalf directly. So.
Last question. Did you delve deeper into some sort of mutation on how transmission of mpox went from, I guess, internal to cutaneous or subcutaneous? How did that happen?
No. We said transmission of mpox,
Yes.
the virus.
Right.
Well, the viruses continue to evolve. And so what you have now is a strain, or they call it a clade, and it's one that has, at least thus far, there's been over almost 50,000 cases on the one we're dealing with this year. Most of those, about 70% have been in children, because they have never been vaccinated against smallpox, which you protected, the same vaccine that's used to prevent smallpox, and young children never have been vaccinated for smallpox, hence they haven't been vaccinated against mpox and all. And so it's just simply continuing to evolve as viruses evolve. And the nature of this one, which has been observed, was initially it showed a much greater mortality. Fortunately, that's been reduced, but it's still several times what we were dealing with in 2022. And then secondly, it does appear to migrate much more rapidly and also to be transmitted much more casually. Why? I don't know, and as a company developing the vaccine, we don't really
With more than 6,000 small and micro-cap companies listed, if you're looking for the next Apple, then Channel Check truly is the orchard. It's an investor community where you can access independent Wall Street research, advanced market data, balanced news, corporate videos, and podcasts. You can even register to attend in-person Meet the Management Series lunches, and to be part of the preeminent annual Small and Microcap Investor Conference, NobleCon. And here's the best news. Since Channel Check is sponsored by the featured companies, premium membership requires no investment. It's absolutely free. So check it out. Log in today. Find out why Channel Check is North America's leading source of research on the companies that just may change the world.